All right, before we black out on y'all, you know what I'm saying? I want to give a special shout out to somebody who's definitely in our thoughts, our well wishes, our prayers. Her name is Melissa. Melissa, if you're listening to the show, definitely want to send you some love, sister. Hopefully, you have a speedy transition in your health. Things get better, and just want to show you some love. With that being said, it's time to black out, y'all. You know what time it is. Let's get it. Oh yeah, I thought we wasn't coming back. You thought they could just get rid of us? We wasn't gonna come back? Look, man, they'll never be able to get rid of us, alright? Okay? They'll never be able to get rid of us. You know what I'm saying? And this is episode 3 of the Black Files, man. Alright? And we got a special treat for y'all. We actually have been doing a lot of research lately, y'all. And one of the things that we researched was the actual X-Files. Yes, we are watching the X-Files, y'all. Okay? So, to begin the show, we're going to touch base a little bit on the first episode, okay? So, you know who we are, man. We don't need introductions, but just in case you don't know. You know what I mean? It's Lady Miss Oshun, Lola, aka Scully. It's me, Mr. Best in the World. You know what I mean? Soapbox, whatever y'all want to say, but we all a soapbox because that's the whole brand. You know what I'm saying? 84 up in the building. AKA Mulder. You know what I'm saying?
I see that.
But we here, y'all, right? So, ladies first. What did you think about the first episode, Lola? I thought a lot about it. There was a lot of shit that happened. You know what I mean? And man, wow.
Well, I'll say this since we're jumping right into things. Oh, I love it. I always say that on my other channel. I say this. I like to jump right into what we're talking about, okay? Because I hate when I'm watching a restream and I have to fast forward, past all benedictions, I guess. But okay, so generally speaking, right, when I watched the episode, what it said to me is that there's a faction within the federal government that acts as an ox sort of circumstance, and they are being watched by a secondary ox, ox mission, right? So, for instance, Mulder was a part of the federal government. He was the federal government. They paid him to investigate everything that he did, okay? Regardless of how strange or the length that he may have took it, he was being paid to do that by the federal government. However, in the first episode, he was very suspicious of Scully, in that he thought she was an ops, right? Sent to basically sabotage him. And he said inside of the show that he felt that his job or his boss sent her, right? So he was fully aware that of the nature or the culture of the federal government, which was sending him to deal with these sorts of problems, but we have our own backup investigation unit to our own people, like that. Now that's not too surprising, right? I mean, most people know that there's always backup systems, right? But what is surprising is that inside of the episode, it was very clear that, and I want to really know what they based this story off of, right? Because I'm sure there was a source there. But what I wanted to understand is he was very clear that he wasn't taken serious, right? Like he was seriously clear about that his job title was just basically some BS. And then when she was sent in, he thought that they were basically mocking him, right? When in reality, they sent her in to ensure that they had a, I guess, front seat at everything he was doing. So I got the impression, and I could be wrong, but I got the impression that it was like a trick bag circumstance where the federal government they got their own people working, but they don't want their own people to know that they didn't want him to know, at least, that they were taking him serious as they were taking him. Because keep in mind, at the very end of the episode, the very, very end, it was very clear that they were monitoring every single thing. It wasn't just we'll just go out there and, satiate this guy because he's alone in his little investigation mission. No, they were fully aware of what he was doing. They were fully aware of where he was at. And even though he wasn't reporting back, when they sent her in, they got another report that they checked off, and it wasn't from it wasn't from Mulder. So, Mulder was the one checking in. And I think at the very end, she got a glimpse at the idea that maybe, just maybe, she was being used as an ops operation to. It wasn't too clear though, but it's like. I found that really interesting that even people within side of the government whose job it is to look into these sorts of cases are also under investigation too, for that very reason. It's mind-boggling, but that's what I took away from that first episode. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's other stuff there, but I took that away just generally speaking overall.
So essentially, you're saying that Scully was vulnerable, not vulnerable, but she was gullible to the ways of the government. Because that's what I got from it. I got that she was gullible, and that she actually believed that these people were actually genuine people. They actually really cared about people, and they actually wanted to help. You know what I'm saying? When it came to just Mulder and what he was doing, you know what I'm saying? Because as they were speaking to her, they was letting her know, like, look, this is something that's kind of off the books. Right? He has his own division. It's called the X-Files, just like the Black Files is off the book, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? It's off the book, and it's something that you're going to be a part of, you know what I mean, that we want you to document on, and, that we want you to put down. And then when they said the document part, I instantly thought of you. I was like, man, Lola be documenting everything. She be documenting everything. So it was like it was a perfect segue into who you were as a person, especially the documenting part. Because I'm like, she's definitely thorough in her research and her documenting. Well, they both are, and I like how, like, when she walked in, they both introduced themselves, and yes, she was suspicious, and he's like, "Oh, are you here to spy on me or whatever?" Because he probably had a bad run-in already with somebody, And I think as time goes on, we'll kind of see that kind of open up in its own little way. We'll see their relationship manifest as far as just the things that they have to go through as a team, right? And, her belief in the powers that be it'll start to become, it'll start becoming different, you know what I'm saying? And you'll start to see where, she's going through different things, you know what I'm saying? So.
Right. Now, I haven't seen it. I'll be honest with you. It's been many years for me, and I haven't seen it. But, I mean, I've seen clips, but I haven't seen full episodes like that, right? Now, here's the thing, though. I also got that she, to a degree, represented most of the government, which are ignorant people to exactly what's going on. So everybody only knows just like this slither of information, and they don't want to know what's going on even right beside them. when the fire happened, right, and she managed to save the critical piece of evidence. That is something that took innovative thought on her own to do, right? She wouldn't have done
which
that.
That creepy guy took it and he put it in a thing with all the other ones that were the same. You know what I mean?
And that's what I'm saying. She did that thinking that she was doing something very courageous, when in reality they were already aware of that. The thing that she was risking her life for, they already was aware. They already got it to a degree, so they wasn't not aware that thing existed. But the fact that she was willing to put her life to a degree at risk for it means that she was very, or at least somewhat, ignorant of who she's working for and what the circumstance is. And I do believe that for the movie, it's a bit sensationalized, but in real life, nobody's in disillusion to the fact that the rabbit hole goes very deep out here. Like, I don't think anyone's in disillusion to that. But
so you're saying that her level of gullibleness is not actually founded in most people. That you're trying to say?
Okay, her level of maybe not gullibleness, but maybe ignorance. Like that level of it is not necessarily found. They tried to cover it with the idea she was a doctor, right? She was a practicing doctor, and she went to medical school and stuff. So therefore, she was very analytical, very logical, very everything, right? But it's like they tried to use her neutrality in terms of her beliefs as a way to make her more palatable to, the science community, right? The actual science community. When in reality, even the science community knows that there's a limit to that logic, or extreme logical approach, even inside of medicine. Like, doctors and people that study medicine know that there's certain parts of the body we don't understand, and we don't understand how it works. We just know that it works. So, to use that as an example of somebody who's very analytical and to the point, and not, let's say, a conspiracy theorist, that to me kind of, I don't know, it came off a little because I'm like, people know who study that on another tip, it is like that. Now, all Mulder tried to tell her is there are things out here that is going to bend your mind, but the reason why it's going to bend your mind is because you haven't seen it before. Therefore, you have, in a sense, no reference point to say, oh yeah, like if you've never seen something that is very, let's say, extraterrestrial, like you've never seen a thing like what you're looking at, you don't have anything in your memory to tell you this is real. You could really think that you're in a dream because you've never seen it. So it's like taste. When you taste anything, the first thing you say is, oh, this tastes citrusy, or this tastes salty. Your mind is referencing something that it knows and saying this tastes like that. That's what that is. When you taste something that has no human taste, like that tastes like nothing that you've ever tasted before, what happens is you get like, people get to screw in their face and moving their head to the side and scratching while they're chewing because their mind is trying to place this in a category. But it's and it's the same thing with the conversation of anything extraterrestrial. When you encounter it, it's going to be something very new to you that you've never experienced. Therefore, it's going to take you by surprise. Now, I'll be honest with you, and I don't talk very much about this because it's really unnecessary because it happens all the time. I've had my own experiences. One experience I've had with another person, and I know that I wasn't like making stuff up in my mind, that it was actually real what I saw. But I've seen things on 2 occasions by myself. One time actually 3 times. One time I was in a crowd of people and I was literally the only one looking at it. And I was just so caught up. But by the time, as everybody knows, unlike some of the other people in the world, by the time I got my phone out, you know what happened. By the time it's flipping, like,
It was a wrap, it was gone.
It was a wrap. And the thing is, I remember it like it was this morning. And I know that, it took me by surprise.
So Scully, tell them what you saw.
Okay.
Oh, what you?
And you know, this kind of goes into what I wanted to get into in the second part of the segment, right? What I seen, I can only tell you what I saw. I can't make any inferences to you as far as like what it was or who it was. I have my ideas because I have my ideas about what it could be, and I think me and you touched on it behind the scenes one time about, you know, time travelers, right? I have my ideas about that, you know, as far as that's concerned. But just to say my experience, there was a time I was out in the countryside, within the city realm, but out in the countryside, and I was riding with my ex in the car. And this is the first occasion, and it was now, mind you, he was an engineer and he studied, you know, physics and astronomy to a degree. So he was very much aware of, like, for instance, when there's an eclipse happening, he was always on top of that. We were driving.
Okay, but before you continue, just want to give a quick shout out real quick to a few people that checked in.
All right.
Want to give a shout out to our brother Chop. You know what I mean? Good to see you, bro. You know what I mean? From the Labuto Network. What up, baby? You know what I'm saying? Salute to you too. Also salute to M3. Yeah, M3, they watching, and we watching too. Continue. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, you good. So we were driving, and we both, I didn't think anything of it, but we both had looked at the moon, and I thought that it was the eclipse because it looked like an eclipse. Now, I didn't care about eclipses, right? It doesn't really make me go, never mind. However, he was like going through some things because in his mind, he was like, I just looked at the calculations. This is not an eclipse. And I was like, what do you mean it's not an eclipse? You see the eclipse right there. Obviously, it's eclipse today. Why are we having this conversation? And he was saying, there is no eclipse today. The way the moon is set, he said, look at the sun. There's no physical way there could be an eclipse today. Look at the sky. And I looked at the sky, and then I looked at the moon, and I said to him, I said, okay, I see what you mean. So therefore, I was forced to understand there's a shadow being cast that shouldn't be being cast, and therefore it might not be what I think it is. Like, the sun, moon, earth, it's something else. And he was there, and I seen it, and I understood. Yes, this is some different stuff, and I am aware that there's a lot of things that you may see on the moon. Okay, I'm aware, but that was the first time something happened that was weird that someone else seen that I was aware of. And I know, okay, this was a real thing. The second time it happened, I was by myself, but I'll just say this. My father told me about something that I looked up that happened in the city some time ago. It's something about some orange lights, specifically.
So wait. So you had the same occurrence, one by yourself and one with someone else.
Yeah. And then there was a third where I was in a crowd of people, but I was the only one that noticed this thing that was right above us. The second time I was in my car and I seen in the distance what looked like what my father described to me, like maybe the year before. And it was just like some lights floating in the sky. I couldn't understand what it was. But they looked very low to the ground. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is a parade or whatever. But it was nighttime, so I couldn't really understand what it was at a distance. So I'm driving down the hill coming towards it, but by the time I got there was nothing. So I kind of was like, okay, so I busted right and I'm getting ready, go uptown. And then the next thing I know, I see something in my rear view, like a ball of, I don't know, fire or light, I don't know. So I stopped my car and I took my head and I looked out the window and I seen. Did it like a chariot of fire that took up some famous biblical figure? Here's the thing.
Sean.
If I had to describe it, I would have to say it was a fiery something fiery. Yeah, I would, because that's the only other word in the English lexicon that matches that. So I okay. So I can't say for sure that okay, it's fire, because it didn't look like fire, but it definitely looked like I was looking at something bright. However, the thing that got me was this thing was coming out of like nothingness. It was weird. And my mind, and that's why I had to turn my car all the way around, because it was at a distance coming towards me in the sky, like let's say a couple, like maybe 20 feet above the the electrical lines in the street. And so I turned around, and this thing is coming towards me, and then another thing appears out of nothingness behind it, and they're both coming towards me. But then, as that happens, I look up, because it's now the first one is over top of me. It's not a ball anymore, and I couldn't understand what I was looking at. Suddenly, there was no ball of light or fire, whatever the hell it was. It was a craft of some sort, and I didn't understand. So and this is happening fast, but there's no sound, and it's not, they're moving not at the speed I couldn't like see it, but it was fast enough, because by the time my mind understood what was going on, I'm trying to get my phone and all of that. And what happened was, after it passed over me, I could see underneath of it, and I could see that it was very technologically inclined. However, it was white. But as soon as it passed, like on the other side of me, it now went back into the nothingness, and it wasn't there anymore. So it was about 7 of these craft. Hey, M3.
Hey.
M3, what up, baby?
What up, Mr. Best?
It was about 7 to 10 of these things just going past, and I just couldn't understand what I was looking at, because it was like something is not there, and then suddenly it manifests out of the atmosphere. I don't know what the hell, but that's all I saw. I didn't see anything else. That's all I saw. And so that's why I'm saying I can't make reference or inference to what it was. I just know it was something I've never seen before. My mind had to compute I was like blinking hard as I don't know what, like, because I just couldn't understand what I was looking at. I didn't have no reference point in my mind. So, this is why, like with Scully, when she came in, and she's like very, very, very logical, and then when she sees something that defies everything she knows, it takes a while for her to physically grasp what's happening and then process that. But the problem with her, unlike me, like most people see something like that, if they got a gun on them, right, they're gonna try to shoot at it, or they're gonna try to, alert somebody that something's going on. In my case, I wasn't sure if it was even safe to do such a thing. And if I was obviously working for the government, I don't know if I would say anything either. But clearly people have been saying a lot since the 30s, especially people that work in the armed forces, and it's just been covered up. But I think she exemplified in the film so many people that work for the federal government that come in logical, and they're very straight line people. They're not stupid. They're not conspiracy theorists. And when they encounter something, their job is to report it, just like hers. But when they report it, it's like the government already knows, and they're just taking notes. It's like they're just taking notes. So that begs the question: well, what is the point of even saying anything? Because obviously they're just taking notes. They're not concerned with, I guess, security. They're not concerned with anything else. However, I have noticed, like inside of the film, there's certain things where the government will get involved. Like in the Virginia case in Brazil, the government got way involved in that, publicly, because that case was something that you don't really see too often. You got villagers claiming that freaking extraterrestrials are walking around, and there's a smell associated with them. On top of that, people are getting sick from even touching the ground or anything that this thing came in contact with. They're getting sick, and doctors don't know how to treat it. So yeah, they flew down there real quick. But and y'all know that case happened back in the 90s. So
I'm gonna pause you real quick. I got some questions, and I definitely want to get M3 in. M3 got the glasses on. You know what I mean? He about to black out because he been doing his research as well. You know what I mean? Give a shout out first to the homie Arshawn, aka Critically Drinking. What's good, baby? You know what I mean? Also give a shout out to the homie Bolo TV. Bolo for Dolo. Bolo, what up, man? You know what I mean? Bolo, I gotta give you a call on some stuff too. I'm gonna call you soon, family. Now we gotta talk some business. Also, shout out to our family, Mr. Nebraska. Hey, family. What's up, family? Also, I give a shout out to the homie, Stan Joseph. Stan Joseph, what up, man? What's going on? You know what I mean? Okay, so what we're talking about, Mr. Nebraska, we are talking about the show X-Files. So Black Files, we do cover X-Files too, as well as other things to come up as well, but we're not going to tell you what that is, okay? Because we don't want them blacking out on us and taking us out, all right? So I have a few questions for you, Lola. Before I get into my line of questioning, I'm gonna let M3 kind of hold on before M3, because we're gonna shift gears, and then I'm gonna get him. I want him to ask whatever he wants to ask. But yeah, okay. So I'm gonna finish wrapping up my thoughts on the X-Files real quick, and I'm gonna get into my line of questioning.
Okay.
So overall, from the first episode, this is what I thought. I thought that these are two people involved in something that is completely is way over their head, right? Mm-hmm. One person is willing to go all out, and the other person is doing a research, but they kind of don't really know what's going on. Like, they still trying to figure it out. So I felt like Mulder, like, he don't care. He gonna jump. He gonna go into the cave with no flashlight, right? He's trying to figure things out. But she's not really aware of how deep this shit is gonna really get. Like, she doesn't know, but he does, and he doesn't care. Like, you know what I mean? You see how he had the board up there with all the little different things that he was researching. So he's ready. He's ready for this. Like, he knows it's gonna go left, and he's ready for it to go left because it probably done been left for a long time. So he's ready for the shits basically. But Scully is not ready for it. She doesn't, or not that she's not ready for it, she doesn't know that's going to happen. You know what I mean? Because from just seeing her demeanor, seeing how she walked into the office, you know what I mean? It looks like, you know, she's definitely, she's not a softie. Not at all. Like, she's par for the course. But she don't know how left this is going to go, because it's about to go real left. So salute to Wally, good to see you. So my line of questioning from what you shared, right? Let me get your final thoughts, and then me and M3 will get into your questioning.
Oh, well, I'll say my final thoughts on the first episode is that I thought that the writers of the show started it off. I don't want to say 100% the way it should be, but I understood why, because sometimes writers don't always show you what happened first. They show you what happened midway in somebody's experience and then take you down a bit, then throw you back and bring you back. So I understand that from a writer's point of view. However, the way it started, I would say if I was watching it back in the 90s when it first aired, I would probably I don't know if I would take it so seriously based on the first episode, but there was certain flashbacks within the first episode that let me know, okay, you know, this is gonna be good. But the way it was marketed, I guess, it kind of took away from the seriousness of what they were covering, because they back then, and you know it before in 3, that if anything talking about, you know, extraterrestrials back in the 90s and the 80s was the equivalent of you taking the Jetsons seriously. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it was very important for someone to come in with a serious topic and discuss it. So I thought that, don't get me wrong, I liked the episode, I liked the show, but I felt like they could have done better and making it more of a serious, just a serious vibe with it, versus starting it off with explaining to the people that the government, you know, makes fun of its own employees that they send to study these things. Like, yeah. I mean, I would give the show that credit. Now, I know we haven't really gotten into what happened in the show, which it's neither here or there because obviously there's so many things that happened on that series. But I do think that just generally speaking, what happened is something that is not well documented, meaning people go missing just like livestock go missing, right? And we've had a lot of reports of strange things happening with livestock, as well as obviously humans go missing because of other humans, right? But there's a portion of humans that go missing for other reasons that are unexplained, and it's easy for that to get swept inside of, the vast majority of crime, right? It's easy, but that to me is the best cover for something like this because you can't tell the difference between it. So I would say, I think that local government could stand to take these matters a little more seriously because obviously if the federal government is doing it, it's probably going to have to trickle down some more. But now that all of these new memos are out about, UFOs and USOs and a bunch of other stuff, now the government is taking it more serious, but look what it had to come to. So that would be my opinion, generally of the time.
And I love how it gave us like context clues, especially when they were on a plane and the plane started shaking, right? Kind of gave us some context clues, some spooky shit was gonna happen. The car turning off and on, and we marked the X spot on the highway. It was a lot of context clues about what was gonna happen. And I want to give a shout out to Wally. Wally, good to see you, brother. Also, salute to Harris Tribe Media Group. What's going on, family? Shout out to Mr. She Said, Mr. He Said. Mr. She Said, I'm mixing it up. I'm sorry, y'all. Mr. He Said and Mr. She Said. My bad, y'all. Salute to them, man. Salute to the family. M3, from what Lola was sharing about her experiences and what she encountered, do you have any questions for her, sir? Before we get to the main topic. We're about to get to the main topic, but before that, any questions for her?
No, well, not really, because I remember, some of the things that Lola was sharing, right, was more like off, the stream as well. We kind of have is the right word premonitions a little bit, or you foreshadowing? So things that I think that she foreshadows, I think those are things that she talked about in the previous times. Unless if I missed something.
Yeah.
Well, my question is, what do you think that you saw on these instances? What is your theory? What you saw? Was it God? Was it a godlike being? Was it something other? You know what I'm saying? What do you think you saw?
I'm torn, and the reason why I'm torn because I'm aware that since the 40s there's been a cover-up in terms of the government having reverse engineered craft that they came in contact with that is labeled deemed extraterrestrial. And I do believe that just like with Nikola Tesla, while he was silenced, they did not release any of that technology to the public, let alone to the military, because of how dangerous it could be on the open market. Meaning, if they
Tesla is named. That's the name of the car that Elon Musk and all these people are. Elon Musk is basically in control of.
Right, but I'm talking about the actual scientist Nikola Tesla. He died basically as a government reject, because what he was trying to do was to tell the government, hey, you don't need to charge people to get energy. It's free energy around the earth, and it's free to all of us, but it's just a matter of accessing it. And they were saying basically, how are we gonna make money off of something that anybody can access? So they didn't want that technology out there. So they seized all of his papers, and basically he died broke, and nobody would listen to him because the government essentially hired him and then fired him. And so with that same trajectory, I feel that the reason why I'm torn with what I saw is because what I seen could have been just the government in terms of reverse engineering as far as like extraterrestrial craft. Or the only part that tells me that it might not be our government is the idea that what I saw manifested out of thin air. Literally, it wasn't like it came from a long distance and came to me. That's not what happened. It literally manifested. And my thing is, I'm not too sure if the government, like, let's suppose they got a craft, right? They reverse engineered the craft. That doesn't give them the science of how to travel through space-time in stealth mode, like behind dimensional scenes. Like that does not give them that. And so I'm not too clear on that part as far as the government is concerned, and that's the only part that made me feel like it might have been something else. But there's a third option, which I mentioned earlier, in terms of time travel. And this is a theory. I'm not sure about it. I'm still researching, but it's just a theory I have that, in the future, a long way from here, that humans have discovered how to time travel. And they time travel back and forth to different places in time. And this is just one time that we travel back to. And what we see is our own technology just in the future. And that's one thing, that's one idea I have, not simply because of that incident, but because there's other incidences that are reported that seem to be more so reminiscent of us coming back to us, extraterrestrial coming here. And now this isn't everything, obviously. This isn't everything, but this is one aspect that I feel is probably going on, and we don't understand it because time travel is something that's just purely fictional science at this point. We don't have no idea of how, like for instance, we're arguing now, why should we time travel if we do, we mess up the time continuum and thus we don't exist. We still are trying to mentally figure that out. And so this is why I'm saying, like, whatever's happening, it's far in the future. I'm talking about thousands of years in the future. And this is what we're seeing now at a time where we're like archaic beings in comparison to, let's say, the year 8000 AD. Like, if we went back in time 7,000 years from now, in the past, how people live would be so different from us. Imagine how different we are from people living 8,000 years in the future. So, and who knows why we're going to travel back to this godforsaken time. But, like, I don't know why, but it's a theory of mine. I'm still working it out, though, because what I want to do is compile some information about that and make it a cohesive discussion. Because right now, this is just a thing that I've just been working on in the back of my mind. Right.
I like that theory, especially with time travel, because not a lot of people talk about it these days. But with time travel, like, here's the thing. Okay, electric stuff. Back then in the 90s, anybody that would talk about electric cars, even though we were seeing electric cars and flying cars, right, through cartoons like the Jetsons, the movies and all that. But if somebody in the 90s would say, hey, like, we're going to have an electric car next year, a lot of these people is going to look at them like they're crazy. Right. Because at that moment of time, we would have never thought certain things would exist. The first water engine or water powered car, okay, that I'll say, like, the GOP or the GOV, the Gov or whatever, right? You know what I mean? As allegedly, they scrapped the idea, and that person was deleted. Because see, at that point, you didn't really need energy at all. Well, let me correct that. You needed energy, right? But you could use water source as a form to fuel as opposed to gasoline. But the reason why that project was scrapped and later on they started using electric engines or whatever was because, okay, water is easily accessible. You could just grab water from a hose right now and fill up whenever it's needed. But with energy, the Gov have control, just like PG&E and all these other companies, to monopolize over it.
Right.
So because you need that energy source and they have the control over it, in charge, years later, it's easy for them to really produce these type of vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where I'm going to go with the time travel stuff, okay. We've seen drones on video games. We've seen certain operational vehicles that we thought it would just make believe, but in secret services and all that, that was already out in the works years and years ago. And now later they started to bring all that stuff out. So let's say, for instance, what if, like, okay, somewhere deep, maybe if it could be in this earth or maybe in another earth where we're like maybe the same people, but we have different ideologies or different advanced technologies and systems. Maybe those things where you probably can either travel, but not the type of time travel that most people will think. Right. When I mean like that type of time travel, it's not like, okay, you could travel in time and actually have control where it's physical touch. It's not like I could travel back in time or see you somewhere, Lola, right, and have a physical interaction with you.
I see.
But it could be something where it's foreshadowing the future, but then also traveling back into the past. Where it's like mentally, it's like this. You're in another dimension, but your body is like incapacitated. Like you can't move at all. You know what I mean? And I think lightweight, I think we have that type of ability mentally. Because, all right, check me out. All right, I don't want to go too far into this, but it also has me thinking, right? When we have our dreams, last night I had a dream about something, right? And I dreamt that I was like in another dimension. Like it was like a part. It had some type of name to it that I couldn't read because it had like encrypted words into it. But it felt so lifelike. Like I felt like my spirit went to somewhere else. You know what I mean? And like I said, I know like people will be, oh, of course that's a dream or whatever. But I feel like it was so lifelike that I felt like I was seeing into a future or something, like a hidden place that a lot of people have not discovered yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I know my thoughts are going wild about this, but I kind of believe like, there's some form of time travel and there's some form of, whatever that the gov is trying to hide, or like I said, certain Earths or whatever. Because we really haven't really traveled out to further dimensions. They'll tell you certain planets, certain galaxies that they will say that they travel to, but you haven't really traveled to the actual entire galaxy. Right. You'll say there's a black hole, and once you get into that black hole, you'll get sucked in and there's no return. Right. But what if that black hole, okay, that's like this, where it sucks you in, but then it takes you to a different universe?
Well, yeah. Well, see, that's some of the theories that are being debated right now. And here's the simple part about it. People are saying that, simply put, when we look into a black hole.
Wait, hold on. What the hell?
Yo,
wait. I was able to fight him off this time. Wait a minute.
Okay, wait, hold on. Okay, wait.
Able to fight him.
I was getting ready to say, okay.
I was able to fight him off this time. We're still alive.
Okay. We're still alive. Okay, so wait a minute, let me get this out there.
Oh my gosh.
So, simply put, when
that was so close.
Simply put, right, when we look into a black hole, the reason why we are saying it's a black hole is because there's nothing in there that is reflecting light back, right, for us to see what's in it. However, that doesn't mean that there's nothing there. It just means that whatever is there is not reflecting the light rays that are emitted in this universe, right? However, what is interesting is they say at the precipice of that black hole, time stops, meaning Like if you were floating towards it and I was like, I don't know how many miles away watching you, at some point you would stop and just stay there and be suspended. That's what I'm seeing. However, what's happening with you is something different. So I see time stopping, but you are experiencing time continuing. So, but that's because of the way light works. However, it's still things are still happening. I just can't see you go in. At some point, I'll never see what goes into a black hole because time stops at some point and something else happens. I can't see it. But if you were the one going through it, you would understand time has not stopped. So this is where we're at. So when you say you kind of think there's a way to get through this in terms of time, yeah, there's openings in physics right now that they're trying to figure out that says there's those openings there, but mathematically we don't really understand it because it's obviously beyond our understanding right now. But what I want to say to your point though, there's a film that Idris Elba played in where he was the captain of a spaceship and they went to another planet. I forgot the name of it. I watched so many space pictures, okay? And basically he landed on this planet and it was like an empty planet, so they thought. But what happened was when they were in these caves, right? They kept seeing like these ghostly figures running around, right? Long story short, what they were seeing was the past of what happened there. But the reason why they saw the past is because there was an electrical component that recorded the things that happened there. And thus they thought they were looking at aliens on the planet when in reality they were just seeing something that happened in the past. So to your point, M3, about, what we could be seeing could be something from a future or be something from our past. Equally, it could be. That's very real. And I'll be honest with you, some of the stuff I'm seeing, like from our, let's say recent past, it's too on point to be a mistake. For instance, like, remember Back to the Future when they were doing the hoverboard? Yeah. Remember the hoverboard in Back to the Future? That was not an invention at that time, but now suddenly everybody got to hoverboard. You see what I'm saying? And it's like the whole flying car thing that they had, right? Lexus already had, and Toyota already has a patent, and they're developing a vehicle that hovers.
I actually saw one of those too, and it was actually flying. I mean, but why not? If an airplane can fly, if a helicopter can fly, then what makes it so hard to, have a flying car?
Now, the only issue they still have is that political stuff. Meaning this, like you said, they don't want, they need to monopolize everything. So whatever technology they're using in that, it has to be something they can monopolize off of, whatever that is. And right now, they're rolling out technology that I truly believe is maybe portions of extraterrestrial technology re-engineered, but it's not the whole thing, because again, they're trying to get their money off of it. And it's sad because at the end of the day, it's very sad. Because you're not helping people, you're just trying to figure out how you can make money, not how we can live better. And that's the real sad part about what we're doing.
Well, Lola, to even add on to it, yes, they're gonna find a way to monopolize, but that's not their biggest worry. Right. Their biggest worry is to release liability for whatever that's patented. Because here's the thing, unfortunately, people are stupid. So you're gonna have crooks, you're gonna have people, criminals, however you want to call it, right? If they had that source of technology, and you could fly anywhere that you want to fly to, or if you want to be vindictive, imagine flying on top of like a really high, like skyscraper, tall building or whatever. You could do your dirt, or let's just say you're a drunk air flyer. Okay. Right. Now, not only like you're about to crash, but you're about to land on someone else's house. Now you're building a lot of anxiety. You know what I mean? Because if flying cars was from the past or whatever the so-called future was today, a lot of us will be highly at risk because there's always going to be malfunctions. There's always going to be someone that's going to be like, oops, I forgot to put the tank in there. You know what I mean? And it's not like it's going to autopilot all the way through because it's a machine.
Correct.
Just like self-driving vehicles. That's been there for a long time. But Tesla is like one of those cars where it's like, oh, well, it's proven to be somewhat safe. But you're still rolling out the updates. You still got to fix a few kinks or whatever. A robot won't care if you run into a building or run into a child.
Right.
There's no feelings involved into it.
Right.
So there's always going to be hiccups in everything that you try to produce. And I think what it is that man has the capability to do all things what they could do. It's just that they know that realistically, you got to set some type of limitations to it. Because if you go full-fledged and go all out, like you're going to be destroying like half the population. Well, like through like your thoughts, even like with the iRobot. Okay, so we all know that Will Smith iRobot the movie,
right?
But
and
I can't remember her name, but I think her name is Lisa. There was a robot named Lisa, and she was supposed to be pretty much like the bionic maid, the one that speaks Spanish to you or any languages, the one that's supposed to be your cuddle buddy or your bodyguard if needed. You know what I mean? Maybe the one that's supposed to cook your sandwiches, like for Marcus. But Lisa was like, when you ask Lisa a question, Lisa knew about the governmental technology, right? And first thing that came to her mouth was like, okay, how can we destroy the human race? And she said that a few times. Since then, we haven't heard about Lisa since.
He said, oh my God.
I got a question for M3. M3.
Yeah.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah,
I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Because I want to get to the main topic. You know what I mean? Before we get shut down. So M3, this dream that you had, right, or this vision that you had, was this an out-of-body experience? Did you feel like it was an out-of-body experience, or did you feel like you were in your actual body? And the thing in the language that you perceive, that you've seen, have you ever seen it anywhere before? Or was it completely something that you've never seen before?
It was completely where I'd never seen before. You know what I mean? Now there's certain elements, right, that plagues into it. Let's just say most transitions will be like.
And was this an out-of-body experience? Was this an out-of-body experience? Did you feel like you were out of your body?
I feel like I was. Okay, so in a dream, I was, like, you know, you could definitely see like your whole self, but I feel like it was the feeling of it. It felt like it was like an out-of-body experience because it's like I could feel, like I could sense like areas that I never sensed before, like in a regular type of dream, if that makes sense. It's like, man, like I could feel this grass, like I swear, like if I did not wake up, I would have literally thought in my mind, okay, that I have drove or took a vacation or transitioned to a different place without even realizing that I was stuck in a dream, because it was so lifelike, it was so real. The only thing that kind of snapped, that woke me up a little bit, was when I had a thought. I was like, wait a minute, why am I by myself? Although I'm seeing certain people, right, that I've never met before, but the core people, like family or whatever, I'm like, what am I doing, like 200 or 500 miles away from civilization? That was the area, and here's the thing: the atmosphere, right, in the field I saw, it was more like a soccer field, but it had different buildings around it. It had houses. It was like a neighborhood around it. So almost like you're going down from a long hill, going down to like a cul-de-sac. Then you're seeing certain buildings, and there's other hidden areas that I was going to explore before I woke up. You know what I mean? So it was so real, but it wasn't like, oh, I'm like in a city or whatever. It was like I was like in an unknown area that was not even in the United States, that wasn't even worldwide. It was just that type of feeling that I got, which was very weird.
Well, you know,
I felt like I was in a different Earth, basically.
A different Earth. You know what? Okay, if you look up dimension, right? Dimension understanding of like how dimensions are defined, right? One of the dimensions, because they say there's 11 so far that we know of. One of the dimensions that exists is a dimension. I think it's more like six dimension, maybe somewhere around 6 or 7, where you have complete control of the environment within your consciousness, and it's not like a dream where, like for instance, you have a dream, you're walking down the street, obviously you're simulating gravity. Things are just like how it is now. It's just, you know, just other things happening. No, there's dimensions where, yeah, no, you it's very different, like you're describing, where the way it's set up is not conventional to anything you have you can understand. It's something. It's a whole different circumstance with a different physicality of it at all. And there's even higher dimensions where, you know, the dimension space itself is very hard to grasp in terms of what it can do and what your role is in it or where you're at in it. It can get real freaky. But if you look that up in terms of the 11 dimensions, you can probably figure out which one, if that was what I'm thinking it is, which one that fits. And the reason why I say that is because consciousness, as I always say, is the frontier. It's not space. Space is not the new frontier. Space is something that once we understand how to travel space, it's going to be like nothing. Okay. But the human consciousness is the true frontier that we have to conquer, that it will probably take us another million years to conquer. However, that consciousness is more vast than the universe itself. So when people say, oh, well, you had a dream, it's like, let's suppose you had a dream about something that, like in my case, I dreamt that I met a child, and I didn't know the child, but I knew the circumstances of how I met this child. And I dreamt of me meeting my sister's children and their father. I seen it in a dream. I just didn't know who they were because I hadn't met these people yet. But I seen them in a dream 3 to 4 years before I met them. I seen them in my dream, and I'd never seen them before in my life. So was that just me making up stuff and it just so happened to be reality? Like what is that? Like, you know, do you understand the likelihood of you having a dream about meeting someone you have physically never laid eyes on, and then somehow laying eyes on them in the exact way that you dreamt that you would lay eyes on? Like, the probability of that is literally 0. So we cannot sit there and say what you had was a dream. Like, you can't say that about a lot of stuff. I think we color that too much. That word dream is too much.
Let me take it a step further, family, right? Sometimes we also feel people's energy that we never met before. We can feel their energy. We know they exist. We know they are real. We just have never met them before.
I see.
But listen, that's for another topic for another day.
Yeah.
All right? Y'all been waiting for an hour. Thank y'all for patiently waiting. Okay. We had to kind of go down this little, you know, we had to black out on the X-Files for a little bit. We kind of blacked out the way we wanted to. So now we're going to get into the meat of the topic. You know what I mean? So, you know, Lady Oshun, lead us off, family. Where we going today? Where we blacking out today?
So so in the spirit of Judeo-Christendom, okay, I wanted to cover a topic that comes out of the Bible. However, it's not religious. Okay. I wanted to cover the incident involving the prophet Ezekiel. Now, I wanted to read over Ezekiel 1, chapter 1, entire chapter, and I wanted to talk about what that is, because like me and M3 was discussing earlier, when he says, "Well, you know, what do you think?" the writer of Ezekiel, and I'm not saying who the writer is. I'm not here to justify translations. I am only here to help you see what I see. The writer is simply giving you what they saw, and then what you can kind of do is go back to figure out, well, what is he talking about? And I think I've said this probably offline before, that when you're talking about rudimentary language that has very little words in it, and certain things just don't exist in certain cultures at a certain time, for them to have words that represent that thing, there is no words. What you're going to get is a colorful, let's say, anthropomorphic explanation of something very simple to us. And I'll give you an example, right? When we say you're respectable, right? People are used to that word respectable, right? That doesn't sound like a highly technical word, nor does it sound archaic, right? But when I say the word ra, spec, right, and bull are three different concepts, and I tell you that ra is talking about human consciousness, which comes directly out of East Africa, spec, which is talking about the seeing, right, the understanding, seeing, and bull, we're talking about the actual bull, like the animal. But the reason why we're referencing that animal is because in our first understanding of strength came from the strength of animals that we domesticated. So we're utilizing a very archaic word when we say respectable. But does it sound archaic to us in 2022? No. But when you break it down, it's very archaic. It's like, why are we saying, it's like me saying respect a tiger. You're very respect a tiger. That sounds weird. Like, versus respect a bull. Like,
yeah, she's going everywhere. She's going everywhere, Arshawn. She's going everywhere, brother. She's going everywhere. She's going.
Stay with me, Arshawn. Stay with me.
Stay with Arshawn.
The reason why,
Arshawn, if you want to come up, you see the link, Arshawn. You can come anytime.
Right, you can come up. But the reason why I reference that is because inside of the Bible, there is a lot of language like that you're going to read that's very descriptive of something that they're not saying. Like there is no word for what they're saying, but they're describing something as much as they can possibly describe it. Now, I created a visual just to demonstrate that point, and I want to demonstrate it from Ezekiel. There's a passage I want to demonstrate that from, but I want everyone to have us read that passage so we can get context, right? Because I don't want anyone to miss the context of what I'm talking about. And just so I'm clear, the book of let's say the first chapter of Ezekiel is essentially an experience he had with something that he doesn't understand. And he doesn't seek to explain it. He's just telling you what his experience was, and he described it in the words that he understood. So, and there is some translation, a bit of translation, stuff in the English, but it's enough where we can reference the Hebrew and so on if we need to break it down. However, it's kind of straightforward as it is, even in English. So this experience that he had was when he was at a river, and he describes what he saw. Now, the interesting part about this entire story of what he saw is that he never made, in this instance, he didn't make contact with anything. He's just telling you something happened and he's seen it. And he's just, from a distance, telling you this is what it seems like to me. Now, I have my own interpretation to what this is, and I guess we can discuss it. But what I want to do is just first read the story and just kind of read it slowly. And I hope that, everyone watching can kind of pay attention to what I'm saying. And just kind of let it sit with you and not defend it as something physical, spiritual, or whatever the case may be. Just look at it and just kind of, don't try to make it something else. Just accept the words as it is, right? So I want to share my screen and do that. Give me 1 second.
M3 is funny.
And we're reading from the first chapter.
It is just the first chapter.
A vision of living beings. Okay.
Let's see.
Mm.
Oh yeah. Okay. So, all right. So I'll share. I'll share it just so everyone can kind of like keep up with what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay. So bear in mind, okay, what I said, and I'll just read it because let me see. It's about 28 verses, so it's not very long, but it is very important that we discuss this. Yeah. So, okay, Ezekiel chapter 1, all right? Now it came to pass in the 13th year, in the 4th month, in the 5th day of the month, okay, as I was among the captives by the river of Shedar, that the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of what is here God, but in the translation says the Elohim. Okay. Now, just sit with that. I'll come back to the important part of it. Secondly, in the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiachin's captivity, the word of the Lord came expressively unto Ezekiel the priest, the son of Zui, in the land of Chaldeans, by the river Shedar, and the hand of the Lord was there upon him. And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness about it, or around it, and about the midst thereof, which means the middle, as the color of amber out of the midst of the fire. Also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures. This was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man.
You want me to read the rest?
Yeah, you can read the rest if you like. Go ahead.
All right, let me get my narration voice in. And every one had 4 faces, and every one had 4 wings. And their feet were straight feet, and the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot. They sparkled like the color burnished grass. And they had the hands of a man under the wings on their 4 sides. And they four had their 4 faces and their wings. Their wings were joined one to another. They turned not when they went. They went every one straight forward. As for the likeness of their faces, they 4 had the face of a man and the face of a lion, one right side. And they 4 had the face of an ox on the left side. They 4 also had the face of an eagle. Thus their faces and their wings were stretched upward, 2 wings, and every one joined one to another and covered their bodies. And they were, and they went every one straight forward, whither the Spirit was to go. They went and they turned not when they want. Oh, sorry, and they went, Go up some more, let's see. Okay. The likeness of the living creatures. Hold on. The likeness of the living creatures. Their appearance was like a burning coals of fire, and like the appearance of the lamps, it went up and down among the living creatures. And the fire was brightened out of the fire went forth lightning. And the living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash lightning. Now, as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures with his 4 faces. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of a beryl, and they 4 had one likeness, and their appearance and the work was like as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. And they went upon their 4 sides, and they turned not when they went. As for their rings, they were so high that they were dreadful. And their wings, I meant rings. And their rings were filled of eye round about them 4. Let me see. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them. And when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Whithersoever the spirit was to go, they went. I don't know that word, but Twitter or something.
Twitter.
Okay, was their spirit to go, and their wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creature was in wheels. When those went, they went, and when those stood, they stood. And when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up over against them. For the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. In the likeness of the firmament upon the heads of the living creature was as the color of the terrible crystal stretched forth over the heads above. And under the firmament were their wings straight, the one towards the other. Everyone had 2, which covered on this side, and everyone had 2, which covered on that side, their bodies. And when they went, I heard the noise of the wings, like the noise of great waters, as the voice of the Almighty, the voice of speech, as the noise of the hosts. When they stood, they let down their wings. And there was a voice from the firmament that was over their heads, when they stood and had let down their wings. And above the firmament that was over their heads was like the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of a sapphire stone. And upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness as appearance of a man above it. And I saw the color of amber, as the appearance of the fire round about within. From the appearance of his loins even went up, and from the appearance of his loins even downward. I saw it as were the appearance of fire, and it had brightness around about, as the appearance of the bow that is in the cloud in the rain, in the day of the rain. So was the appearance of the brightness round about. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And when I saw it, I fell upon my face. I heard a voice of one that spoke.
Okay, so there's a few words. Thank you, M3, for reading that.
Oh, no problem.
There's a few words in here that like usually you may see in all caps, but when you read the Hebrew translation, that's not exactly what the Hebrew translation is saying. For instance, and this word is in lowercase, but for instance, the word glory in the verse 128, this word in the Hebrew is actually translated as chavod or chavod. And chavod literally means heavy thing, like huge heavy thing. And some people say that it means like awe, like the awe, like awesome thing, right? Like the awesomeness of something. But that awesome like description comes from the actual etymology of the word that means heavy, huge, heavy thing, which is awesome. So, like, you know, we have to be clear that when we say glory, that word glory is very, like, vague, very vague. It doesn't tell you what we're talking about. It just says we're talking about something that's awe-inspiring, you know. But when you read the Hebrew, we understand that that word is an actual physical thing. And here's the thing: we are when I go into the other verses inside of this book of Ezekiel, it clearly says that this glory actually descended from the sky to the ground. In verse 3:22 through 23, it says that he recalls seeing the kavod, or the glory, descending again to him, and he fell upon his face again. He says that. So he's recalling what he said before and saying, I seen this thing again, this glory again, whatever that is. And I hate the fact that it's labeled like that in the English. But essentially, at least from my opinion, what this is describing is not anything that has to do with God or anything to do with glory for what we know it as. These are new age words that are being, you know, infiltrating this culture and this story, and it's kind of corrupting this. So I want to go back and just give you guys my overall understanding of what's being talked about here, because it's kind of weird, right? Like, even reading it is kind of weird to read it. And I remember my first time reading this when I was young, and I was like, what the total bumfuck is this? I knew it wasn't anything to do with religion. I knew that, but I just couldn't, like, understand at the time. So, okay. So here's the thing. In verse 1 through 2, right, the writer is trying to essentially establish a timeline. And the thing is, when writers try to establish a timeline, especially, 1 through 3, they're doing that because they're essentially saying, hey, I can tell you when this happened so that you can go look back on it. Now, the audience that is reading this, obviously, at first is not us, because I don't know when the first year, the first 5th day of the month, or whatever of the kings, I can figure it out, obviously, if I don't research that much. But he's trying to establish himself as someone who is telling the truth, that can recall places and time and have someone follow up on it. So he's being specific that way. Hey, Vaughn.
Vaughn Eric, what up?
And so, and that's what makes me think that this right here was actually written by this man. And at the time, he said that he wrote it, okay? Because there's not too many other writing that will start off with justifying what happened based on a date. Okay, so, like, if I told you something happened to me, you know it's the truth when I say I remember it like it was yesterday. It was in June of 1997. I was riding along with, I'm justifying that I'm recalling an actual event. This was not something in my head. This was not a dream. It wasn't something I'm making up. So that's what I take from verses 1 through 3. Versus other verses and chapters in the Bible that are purely, you know, for other reasons and stuff. Now, here's what's interesting in verse 4. It says, and I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud. Now, a whirlwind appeared from the north, meaning up top. That right there is some very, very crude language for something that he didn't understand with his own eyes. Similar to what, and this is my opinion, similar to what I explained earlier, that I'm looking and then suddenly something appeared out of nothingness, right? I'm not saying that there's nothingness there, but that's the only word in English that I can explain to you right now what happened to me. Now, the word nothingness doesn't exist in the Bible, but it exists in our culture today. So when he says a whirlwind came from the north, either he's saying that suddenly all I could feel was a bunch of wind swirling around, or literally the sky did this thing where it's moving in a whirlwind and then something's appearing out of that. That's what he's describing here. But he's talking about like a cloud. And when he say a great cloud, keep in mind, right? When the Bible references great things, it's not exactly what you might imagine. Like when they say the great beast, right, that roamed the earth, it's talking about dinosaurs, you know. So you say the great cloud, it's not talking about a cloud, literally. It's not talking about it. It's talking about something else that's moving from the sky coming down to earth.
Maybe now, like a tornado or like some type of like sandstorm where things are covering within your vision, and by the time when it clears, now you're somewhere else.
Now, and that's the thing. He's describing what's happening, like what he's feeling, what he's describing. So that's why I said either he's talking about something that's descending, that's causing like a strong wind to happen because it's coming down, or he's talking about something that's happening in the sky that he's not understanding what he's looking at. He's just describing how the sky is moving. One of the two. But he goes on to say a fire enfolding itself. Now that's similar to Deuteronomy, where it talks about a fire consuming that's not consuming itself. It's firing, but it's not firing, right? So it says a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it. So it's like he's saying that there was something here that was bright. It seemed like it's bright enough to be fiery, but it's not fire. Like he's telling you, yeah, he's describing it as fire, but fire consumes. He's saying that this is not consuming whatever it is. That's the same description given by the prophet Moses about describing what he encountered on, was it Mount Sinai? I think it is. It's the same description. And then he says, and out of the midst or the middle of this fire, it was like the color of amber. Now, this color amber that's being described here is talking about something metallic. And he's saying out of the midst of the fire. So this is where my opinion of that whirlwind comes in at, because he's saying that something comes out of something that's fiery, that is like metal. So he's seeing something, like he's just seeing fire, and then out of it comes something concrete that he recognizes. So, you know, this is what I'm saying. I'm thinking he's talking about something that's happening in the sky that he's witnessing in terms of some sort of craft that's metallic in nature. It's an actual thing. But he's telling you essentially there's a bunch of fire around that's not really fire, and this thing is coming out of it, whatever it is. So that to me was very mind-bending, but it doesn't sound that way with all this rudimentary language talking about whirlwind, clouds, fire, and a mist and amber, things we're already aware of, but we're not really thinking of it in terms of some sort of like extraterrestrial encounter. Like we're not thinking of that. We're just like, oh well, you know, he something's happening to him, but it's not really saying that specifically. Now, what's interesting further than that, okay, is, and not that that's not important, but what's further interesting is that he's making clear that what came out of the amber thing, the thing that was metallic, was 4 living creatures, and they looked like men. Now, it's interesting. He says they look like men, and he's in both verses. He's essentially drawing a distinction, meaning that there's likeness there, but not really. Like, and he doesn't really explain to you how they don't look like humans, but he's just telling you they look like humans, but there's a little something different about it. So we understand, and this is why I believe this book and about from Ezekiel, because it's not putting no cut on this explanation. As strange as it may be, it's just giving you just that. So that's another reason why when I read this, I had to read it several times, because this language on it is coloring the truth of it. So when he talks about the 4 faces, right, and the 4 wings, I know in literature we see like men, like actual men, right, with like 4 different physical heads on their body, looking like human animals and stuff like that, and literal wings on the back. I don't believe, well, and I'll get to the wing part, but I don't believe that what he's describing is an actual wing that is inside of the literature we're used to, like a bird's wing. I don't believe that's what he's talking about. I believe the word wing is simply the closest word he can use to describe something that makes this thing fly. Now, something that makes this thing fly could be anything. Literally, it could be anything. But he goes on to describe what these wings look like and what they do. But they're not actual wings when you pay attention to what he, in the context of what he's saying, that he's not saying these wings are flapping around. He's not saying these wings are spread out like an eagle. He's just using the word wing and talking about moving around freely within the airspace. That's all he's saying. So the assumption is, oh, well, they got flapping around wings like pigeons or something. That's what I'm used to my entire life. But that's erroneous. But I want to go to 7 because this is where I have the image that I wanted to show you guys. In verse 7, it says, and their feet were straight feet. That's kind of strange. Their feet were straight.
Like, so was it gay?
Huh?
So what are they saying? The feet wasn't gay?
Listen, apparently his feet were, but their feet were. But I found that to be interesting because when he talks about their feet being straight, he's describing something about their feet that's very different from their feet. Now, keep in mind, back in that time, people wore sandals and they wore what's called leather shoes, right? Leather shoes were basically in the shape of your feet, your natural feet, and most people wore sandals. Shoes were not a real thing, like at that time, the way we understand it. So beyond that, he says, and the sole of the feet was like the sole of a calf's foot. So he's being very specific in what he's seeing of these beings in terms of their outer look. And remember, he said that they look human, but he's kind of lending to they're not really looking human. So when he's talking about their feet, we should understand, well, this is something that he's describing, that he can describe, that he has words for. Then it says, and they sparkle, talking about the feet, like the color of burnished brass. So burnished brass is basically brass that is being heated. And you know how when you heat something, sometimes the color of it changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can like do this thing depending on how you're looking at it and depending on how hot it is, right? So what's interesting about this is that what this burnished brass is the closest description he can give to the color, right, of what's happening. But notice what he's not saying. He's not saying this is the color of brass. He's saying this is the color. The color I'm seeing is the color that is created in a process. When something's happening, this is the closest thing I can show you. Like when you're burning something at a high heat, a certain type of metal, the colors that the metal creates in that moment is the color of their shoes. Now, back in that time, who had colors that ranged in terms of that sort of like color range? No, nobody. So this is what I'm saying. If you read this verse carefully, you start noticing that he's not describing God. He's not describing what you think is as conventional angels. He's describing what we would probably consider as people from today. And this goes back to what I said to my theory, that I don't believe that all of these encounters are quote unquote extraterrestrial. I kind of believe that these might be, they are extraterrestrial in nature, but it might be an issue of time travelers. Because let me show you something. Let me stop sharing this. Let me show you something. Just so you guys can get a visual of what I'm talking about. Because this I'm still working on my utilizing my technology. Oh, here it is. Okay. So let me go back to verse 7. It says, and their feet were straight, and the soles of their feet was like the soles of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like the color of burnished brass. So this guy lives in a time when the only thing he's seen close to what he's looking at is this stuff right here on the right. Like, this is the closest thing he's ever seen. But then he sees something that looks like this, but it's brass. And here's the thing, he's talking about the shape of their feet, like that round shape. Now, no human's foot is round. So he's talking about shoes. He said Jeezy's from. Listen, y'all better stop playing. Listen. That took my attention right there, like the Yeezys. Well, okay, let's go with Yeezys. We ain't know nothing about these Yeezys right here, okay? But keep in mind, right? He's describing what he's seeing, which is their straight feet, right? Meaning that there's no bend in the feet. Notice what we're looking at right here. Usually in, let's say, moon rock shoes, right? There's no bend in those shoes. And actually, that's on purpose, because for their shoes to be bent, first of all, the shoes are weighted. That's one. Two, it's straight, because for you to have that sort of flexibility means that you're working with the same gravity field as you're working here on Earth, which you're not doing on the moon. So when he's talking about straight feet, he's talking about feet that seem like it just doesn't like move like our feet does in, let's say, regular shoes or sandals. So I thought this was very interesting, and this is something that, you know, came to mind and stuck with me for many years when I first read this. They had straight feet, the soles were like the soles of a calf's foot. And I'm like, okay, this isn't their feet, this is their shoes. So okay, I got you. So this is right here is my rendition of my understanding of that. So if it's not clear enough from verse 1 through 7 that what this man is talking about, I don't know what is. Now, and I can take this down, because I think you guys can see it. Okay, so in verse 8, and after I go through this, you guys can critique all you want, and I'll let you guys rock out. In verse 8, it says, and they had the hands of a man. He just said they looked like humans, but he has to specifically go into their hand shape. You understand? And it says, they had the hands of a man under their wings on their 4 sides. Right? Now, keep in mind, let's stop right now. Remember I said wings, he's not talking about like feather wings. It's not what he's talking about. But he is talking about a flying apparatus. He says, the hands are under the wing. So let me read that again. Their hands are underneath of something on their person that allows them to fly.
Okay.
What are we talking about? Something that they have on their body allows them to fly. So basically their suit, whatever they're in, is allowing them to fly. And if I was someone in his time frame trying to describe how these people are flying, and yet there's no physical wings on their backs, I would have to say their wings are on their arms, on their 4 sides. How many sides do they have? They have 4 sides. So yeah, I mean, look at you. Listen, you can say what you want, but you can't refute what I'm saying. That's what I like about research. Like, you can say, research, but you can't refute it. Now, like I said, I'm not telling you what it is. Like in my own story, I can only tell you what it's saying and what my understanding of that is. So when I say the word wings don't mean wings, I mean that literally, because look at how it's being used in the text. It's not being used in terms of passing around. It's being used in terms of something covering their hand that, like, they have hands, but it's covering their hand on all 4 sides of their body. So we're talking about their clothes. And it says, and they four, all four of them had their faces and their wings. Now, he's taught essentially that little part right there is to say each one was independent of each other. So I don't know why he would need to specifically go into that, other than the fact that the next verse says that even though they all were in a sense separate, right, in terms of their physicality, they were still joined together. Now, that's a mind-bending, right? No, not.
So not like that, like, because maybe they probably have like some type of bat wings.
Well, keep in mind, remember on Batman when he had those things that, how can I describe it? It was it wasn't his cape, but it was some sort of technology that allowed him to levitate on his body, right? Similar to that.
Well, like a cape or something?
I see it in my mind. I don't remember the film, but it was basically some sort of technology that was on the arm, under the arm, or on the arm, something like that. But it wasn't feathers like that. It was like technology, like actual, like it looked technical, but it allowed him to fly. But it was like coming over him, like it was weird. I've seen that on a movie before, and I don't know if it's Batman, but it seemed like it would be that. It maybe, I don't know, it might be something else. But either way, he's not talking about feathers though. He's talking about something that is like a
jet, like some type of fire or something that's pushed him up, or some type of wind.
Keep in mind, he's not being detailed about it. He's only saying whatever it is, it exists on their arms, over their hand. Like it comes over their arms, over their hand, and it exists also on other parts of their body. So, if it's over your arm, these are your two sides, and the only other two sides is your front and your back. So that makes four sides, which is what he said. So don't get me wrong. I'm following what he's saying, that your body has four sides, and he's saying there were wings on all four sides. Meaning they were flying apparatus. The flying apparatus of these beings existed on their body on all four sides, not on their back, like a pigeon. Like he's not saying that. He's being very specific, but at the same time, he doesn't know how to explain it, but he's just giving you that rudimentary explanation. So I guess you can look it up on your own if you're reading his work or whatever. Now, in verse 9, it says, their wings were joined one to another. They turned not when they went every one straight forward. Now, that's weird to say, because keep in mind, he just talked about wings, right? Flying apparatuses. But then he's saying these same apparatuses is joined to the other people that's there with him. So it's kind of hard to imagine what kind of apparatus would these beings have on their person that also is connected to the next one that allows them to, quote, levitate. And the reason why I use the term levitate is because in the next portion of the sentence, it says they turned not like when they went, like they didn't turn, yet they were moving straight forward. So he's used to, for instance, when you're moving, something's turning, right? You're moving, turning, yet that's not happening. They're standing straight still, and yet they're still moving. So he's attributing their movements to whatever this flying apparatus is that they're all connected to when they're moving. And there's four of them. So, when I start imagining what that looks like, obviously they must be in a straight line or a circle, moving like in a straight line or a circle. However, he also added that there's something else at play here with them, meaning there's these circles where he says these wheels, and that's what he's known for, the wheels within wheels. And I'm not going to be exhaustive with this, but essentially these wheels, right, is what he's saying is allowing these beings to actually move, meaning he said the spirit of these beings is in the wheel. Now, what I take that as is him saying that these wheels seem to have their own consciousness. Sort of like, for instance, like if somebody didn't know what Alexa was, right? And you just started talking and I say, hey Alexa, do such and such, and Alexa just says, okay, did you mean such and such? They would assume that Alexa like is an actual being, or my spirit is speaking through Alexa, because Alexa is a machine, yet it's acting like it's a live human being, right? They don't know that Alexa is a program. Like, they don't know that. They just say that he's just saying that the spirit of the beings is in the things that is causing them to actually move around. So he's not telling you what he's not seeing. He's not making no inferences. So again, I believe what's here. Okay, and I'm not a Bible thumper. Okay, I'm not even Christian, but I believe every word of this. Okay, because this man is not, like I said, Atru, this man is not putting no cut in it. So
Truth, what up, bro?
So now the only other part that I want to mention here before you guys go in terms of questions, right, is when he talks about the four faces. Here's my theory, because I think this is the part where it gets a bit. This is the part where it is the most convoluted, right? I feel like when he references the four faces and he references the animals, right? In my opinion, I think this is the part where it gets anthropomorphic in terms of their culture. Because what he's saying is you can see their face, but you can see on this side different animals. Now, usually animals represent the astrology, the placement of the stars, right? Usually when people say you can see all of the animals, or let's say the zoo, right, the animals, what I think this is that he was looking at a space suit where he could see into a ball and he could see their face, but their faces were all faced, meaning he could see up, to the side, and back. And what he's doing is coloring that with the stars, meaning that in a 360-degree understanding of what he's looking at, you can see everything in this thing called their face. Again, he's trying to describe what he's looking at. He can't say, I see glass, I see plastic, I see anything. All he sees is, I can see their face, but I can also see the faces of the animals in each side. And the animals is what? The four cardinal directions. I can still see all directions in his face. For instance, when you look at the astronauts that we send to the moon, right, in some of these photographs, they're in their helmet. You can see their face in the helmet, right, to a degree, but you can also see everything else reflected back. Now, if I wanted to describe that without saying any of that, I would probably say, I see the likeness of a face, but I also see the likeness of the star Sirius, the dog star. I see the dog in his face. I'm not talking about a dog, right? What I'm trying to say is, I'm seeing literally everything in this thing that's around his head, but I can see he has the face of a man. But again,
so basically what you're saying is that the actual image is actually mirroring what's around them.
Correct.
So it's a mirror to everything that's around them.
It's a mirror to everything, and because he's using terminology from their culture that represents the different star systems, what he's trying to say is this: what I'm looking at is something over his head that allows me to see in every direction, yet I can see his face in it. But we are fully aware of that because we make those things. They're probably made in China, but we make those. But he doesn't know that. He's just describing what we already are aware of.
Not made in China.
So, right, like those are made in China. But again, this goes to my point of why I truly do feel that we're not talking about extraterrestrials. We're talking about us, things that we made. But we're reading about technology that we created within the last century, almost 2,000 years ago, more than 2,000 years ago. You understand? This is not something that we are not aware of. This is not exotic technology. This is technology that's very, very common to us right now. So, I mean, I'm not saying that is the truth here. I don't know, but based on my reading, this is what I'm taking from this, and trust me, I'm combing through this, over the years. So I'm okay with it not being that, but for right now, this is where I'm at. It does go now. Here's one more thing, and I know I keep saying this, right? I find it very funny that he talks about the appearance.
Salute to OG Patrice.
Hey, OG.
Salute, OG Patrice.
Hi.
But before you make that point, Lola, right? I think it's essential to see that the Bible uses terminology that's familiar for that time, right?
Correct.
Not only that, when it's being basically translated into English from Hebrew and Greek, right? Mm-hmm. They're giving a translation of those words,
correct,
right? But even in that translation, remember, we're not getting the actual Bible. We're getting the Bible that has been loosely tampered with and then translated.
Right. Correct.
Okay.
Right.
And purposely loosely tampered with and translated based on the fact that they don't want you to know certain information.
Correct.
And that's just a fact. We can get into the Vatican. We'll get into the Vatican and everything else another time. But
Sure. Now, to your point of things translated that they don't want, this what I'm reading from that I put on the screen earlier. This is coming directly from the Jewish Virtual Library. Now, mind you, the word Elohim, right? They know very well what that means, and they know it doesn't mean God. It doesn't mean Yahweh. They know very well, but you see, they just translated that right there, right? This comes from the Jewish library. This isn't just your regular run-of-the-mill Bible translators from, none of that. This is directly from the library. So they're doing that on purpose because when you read it in the Hebrew, it's very clear what these words mean, like kabod. Like, they're not talking about the glory of God. They're talking about the big, heavy thing that God came down and literally that's what the sentence translates to. But they'll tell you, it means the glory of God. No one, they ain't talking about God. No one, they ain't talking about who you pray to, that the all-pervading consciousness of the universe. They're not talking about that, and they know that. But they know that translating it into the word God puts it in a context for people in 2022 that's very erroneous to, like you said, people back then that were not talking about that, but suddenly, their words are being misconstrued. And like, for instance, in verse 113, it says...
Hold on. Brother King, stay sucker free. Man, listen, if you share these comments, you got to come up, brother, if you can. Please come up, brother, please.
Listen, I know it's hard. I know it's hard to come up here. I know, but you you can. It's okay.
Before you shut us down, you know what I mean?
God's spaceship name glory.
Right, and that's God's spaceship name is glory. But here's the thing, critically drinking. God's spaceship is glory. It's not so much his name, but it is glory, meaning it is awesome. The word glory means awesome. The awesome thing. So it is not, it's God's glory. It's the Elohim awesome thing. That's what that really is talking about. So, I mean.
What's up, Ruff?
Hi.
Yo, salute. What's good? Y'all told me to cam up, so I'll come up. Now, man, I didn't want to, I didn't want to like intrude, man. I mean, that's why I'm just leaving those little comments in the chat.
No, you're not intruding, brother. We told. Listen. This is a free space. You're always free to come up. You know what I mean? However you want to come up. We just want to hear. You know what I mean? Based on your perspective, why'd you share what you shared in the chat? Just overall, what you think of the conversation. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, this is a free space, brother. My space is a free space.
I think this conversation is amazing, man. Like, this is definitely dope. Not a lot of content creators expound on these things. Yeah, like the first breakdown she was given, right, about now which book in the Bible you was talking about, the guy that's giving the description of the phenotype of the angel? Ezekiel. Word up. Yeah, like the breakdown he was given with that angel, right? Okay, because there's 4 types of different angels, right? You got the angel, or you got the archangel, you got the angel of cherub, which they're more aggressive. You got the angel of Sephram. My bad, I'm butchering the word, but I think the word Sephram means like 5 in one. and like they got like 6 wings, and you know the list goes on. And the phenotype you're describing of the angel you're talking about is the angel of cherub. Now the Book of Enoch, it breaks that down too. You know what I mean? It breaks that down too. And yo, you was talking about Elohim, right? Yo, the word Elohim means more than one God. Now, there is like information that's going around about the Elohim, which is like I think like 12 black godlike beings, right? And they have the, you know, they resemble us, you know what I mean? And those are described as the Elohim, you know what I mean? Which means
You said black?
Yeah, they're like.
Well, hold that thought right there, right? Because that goes right into verse 113. Listen to this, Rush. It says, "As for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, and like the appearance of lamps." Where have we heard about the shining ones?
Yo, Book of Revelation, when they broke down the phenotype of Jesus Christ. It also said that his feet looked like burning brass. Know what I mean? And it described his texture of his hair. It's like woolly as a sheep. Know what I mean? And the list goes on. Know what I mean?
So here's the thing. Keep in mind, Ezekiel is trying his best to describe.
Where's Bodo TV when you need him?
But
Where's Bodo TV when you need him?
And I get that, but he can't be but so clear given his limited language. But when he says their appearance was like burning coal, right, is something that is black, very black.
Right.
It's very bright too at the same
time.
I
mean, but here's my things, right? Like we I don't know if you guys are aware of the Dark Ages. Know what I mean?
Yes,
but
sir.
Yo, a lot of these biblical characters and angels that they talked about, they all are melanated creatures, man. Know what I mean? From the humanoid types, from the you know, like Moses and all that, and Christ and all that. Like these are all melanated people. Know what I mean? On top of that, the phenotype of these angels are melanated as well. But now some of these angels, they look different because, yeah, like you said, like some of them have like a head of an ox. You know what I mean? Face of a man, like, you know what I mean, like 4 different heads and all that. And like, also the Book of Revelation describes a certain angel like that. And like all it does is just exalts the Most High day in and day out. You know what I mean?
Well,
so
when you say exalts the Most High, right? Keep in mind, and this topic isn't necessarily covering that, but we're okay. Ultimately, right, it seems like in the Bible, with using this term Elohim, that's talking about powerful ones. It's not really saying God. Like, it's not talking about God. The word God is a misnomer. It's talking about
the word. Hold on. The word God itself means power. Know what I mean?
Right. So when we say powerful ones, that's a better, accurate term than saying the word God, right? But when we say, well, the powerful ones have a leader. You see what I'm saying? And the lower ones, the quote unquote.
Yeah, I mean that's why I said that's why I say the word Elohim means more than one God, because the word God means power. But yeah, well, I mean we're talking about the same thing. You know what I mean?
Okay, but see, keep in mind the reason why I say we have to be careful with how we say it is because when people think about the word God, certain religious ideas conjure in their mind.
Yeah, and you're right about that because all right. Okay, when you read your quote unquote Bible or whatever, right? They remove the word, they replace God's name with the word Lord and El, right? Now the reason why they did this is because the people that was this before the people who got their hands on the information and put it out there, the people that actually were inspired by the Ruach to write this information felt as if they were to put the Most High name in there, it's not a good thing because they felt like his name is such a holy thing, so they didn't want people to misuse the word.
Miss Nebraska. I know.
They didn't want to.
Sorry.
They didn't want the people to misuse his name, so that's why they replaced Yah's name with the word Lord or El. Know what I mean?
But Rush, you understand that the Jews are trying to basically cover a history with spirituality that has nothing to do with that. Meaning this, the word Lord and El is correctly placed in the Bible. It is. And here's why it's correctly placed.
Wait, you really want to go there, Lola? You really want to go there?
No, I'm just saying the word Lord means owner. Okay, the word El means power. Elohim literally just is talking about them being beings and plural. But El, you see that in other cultures, the term El and Al. Okay, Al and El is the same thing. Okay, don't let people tell you.
Right. Like for example, right. The what's Superman's real name? His Kryptonian name, Kal-El, right?
Kal-El, yeah.
Right? Well, his name means the house of God. No, the voice of God, right? His father's name is Jor-El. Jor-El name means the house of God. Know what I mean? So like, there is some validity to what she's saying. Know what I mean?
I'm just saying,
from that aspect.
Can I tell the story real quick?
I blame the Jews.
Can I tell the story real quick?
Oh.
Can I tell the story real quick?
Go ahead.
I used to joke around, and I would call myself King, and then I would call myself my first name after that. M3 know what I'm talking about, right? I even had a social media name that had King and then my actual first name, which nobody will ever know unless you really know me. Now, with that being said, right? I was taking Uber or Lyft to a certain location, and this driver was just talking to me, and he was just like, he would just give me like so much compliments and encouragement. Never met this man a day in my life, right? And then he said, I know who you are. And then he said the terminology, he said King, and he said my first name. He said, that's who you are. And I said, how does he know that people call me that? You know what I'm saying? But he knew who I was. Another quick story. One time I was sitting outside of a church, right? True story. It was me and a group of friends, M3, you might have been there. Don't really know, I can't remember. But we're sitting, we're talking. This lady, who seemed like she was homeless, she comes up to me, right? She comes up to me, she don't come up to nobody else. She grabs my hand and she bows down, she places her forehead on my hand. And I let her. Normally, I would never let anybody touch me, okay? I would normally not let this happen. But I felt comfortable in that moment, right? Mm-hmm. She touched me, she touched my hand, put her very head on my forehead, her forehead on my hand, right? And she did it for a minute. She shook my hand and then she walked away, right? This is in front of a church. And I'm like, man, like what? Like, yo, and like I was comfortable. You know what I'm saying? Like I was comfortable, like none of this bothered me. None of this bothered me. You know what I'm saying? So there's other things, but I'm not gonna share. But yes, okay? You know what I mean? Sometimes things happen, right? And, and my name has L in it, okay? It has L in it. So, you know what I mean? I'm not saying I'm God, okay? I ain't saying that, but what I'm saying.
But what's wrong with saying that we take names in our culture that talks about power, or like for instance, if like I said to you before, the word respect is talking about the strength of. Even though we're using the word bull, which is an animal, it represents strength. So when we say the year of the bull, what are we talking about? We're talking about the year that you exert the most amount of strength that your consciousness can allow you to do so. You understand? Like that animal represents other things. We're not saying that you created the universe per se, and that we're not equating your physicality to that when we say El. That's not what we're talking about. And to Ms. Nebraska's point on the word El, right? Inside of Ezekiel doesn't use the term he at all inside of none of his explanation of Elohim. Now, we cannot say, based on the Bible, that Elohim means he is powerful.
No, Sean. Oh my gosh.
It means they are powerful. The powerful one.
Yeah.
And Ezekiel, if you look at it within the context, and everybody can read whatever translation you want, when you look at Ezekiel in context, he is not back and forth with that. This is what I'm saying. This man right here is not lying. Whoever wrote this, they forgot to redact.
Oh my gosh, M3.
They forgot.
M3, don't say that.
So I'm just saying, like, we got to be careful with the words that
I know you are.
And in choosing these words, that's why it's important that we don't say, well, you know, this is talking about one thing when it's not, because again, in the English, it can get real muddy real quick, because English is a limited language too. People don't look at it that way, but in English is limited as well. Like there's certain words that in concepts, let's say, that exist in other cultures that we don't have words for in English. So, there's a lot of explanation for that. You understand? Like, it's just a lot of explanation. It just is. And to the point, like I said, you know, what it seems like we're talking about are people similar to ourselves that have been to this planet before, long time ago, and we're reading about it now. And maybe in the future, we're still looking at the same thing. I don't know. That's just a theory. But whatever it is, this man is not talking about the person that you might be praying to on Sunday. He's not talking about that. He's talking about something totally different. And the Jews that took this work in assumed that they could put the word God on this and change the meaning. But you can't change the meaning because the explanation is too precise. You cannot. God does not put God does not wear boots. God does not have a likeness of anything. God does not need wheels to move around. No matter.
But you got to understand, right? Yo, when the Great War popped off within the heavens, a third of the angels got banished. So who to say these are not fallen angels themselves?
No, I'm not making no claim on what's fallen angels, because this isn't a debate. What I'm saying here is that Ezekiel is talking about his encounter with physical beings that came out of a physical craft. And in Ezekiel 3, he refers to the craft again. He does. Now, if you keep using the word glory versus kavod.
You mean chariot? I think he used the word chariots.
No, he used the word kavod. Kavod means heavy thing. He used the word kavod. And that right there in the Hebrew means the big heavy thing, and that word was also used in Genesis as well, in the sighting with Moses, where he talks about, can I see your kavod? Like, and he was like, you can't see my kavod except for if you hide yourself when it takes off. That's what it said in Moses, and it's using the same word, the same verbiage. So this is what I'm saying. It's covered, but you have to do your research, because what we're talking about here is a book that is not about spirituality, but rather encounters from other beings, from other worlds in a far remote past. Now, the problem is when you get to the New Testament, right? Jesus in the New Testament is differentiating the God that you pray to from the God of the Old Testament. He clearly says, that is not what the fuck I'm talking about. That's what he says in Hebraic terms. He's like, I'm not talking about that. That ain't my God. That's not what he's talking about. So, and I like the fact that he did that, because if he didn't say that, you would assume just because he's quoting the Old Testament that he's referring to this entity called Yahweh that is in charge of the Elohim. The word Yahweh means I am who I am. I'm not saying what the word Yahweh means. What I'm saying is,
yeah, but this hold on. Let me interject real quick. This individual that you're quoting, Moses himself spoke to him, and he also called himself Yahweh. He spoke to him through a burning bush. Hold on. Let me say this real quick.
You're not hearing what I'm saying. You're making a point that has nothing to do with what I'm saying. I'm not debating that. All that could be true. What I'm saying is, when you get to the New Testament is all about spirituality. It's all about journey to self.
Okay. The reason why they hold on. Let me just say this real quick. The reason why the New Testament expounds on spirituality is because the New Testament has the Book of Acts. The Book of Acts breaks down on how these individuals tarried to receive the Ruach. Now, the Ruach is based on exercising that style of spiritual reality, because within the New Testament, that's when they received the Ruach. and that's when they had a good explanation of the Ruach. I mean,
no, I'm not talking about that. That's beyond the scope of this conversation. And honestly, I don't get into religious ideological debates on things like that. What I'm saying is the Old Testament is where you find a lot of this woo-woo shit that makes you wonder what the fuck are we talking about. But when you get to the New Testament, it talks about Jesus and his message. His message is not about this. This is not his message. And he made it very clear that the God that took them inside of the quote-unquote desert and gave them snakes to eat when they disobeyed is not his father. Jesus made that very clear in the New Testament. So he is telling you that whatever is happening in the New Testament, that
are you sure about that?
Nah, I disagree.
Yes. He said that there's a passage when Jesus talked about with a father. He was talking to the Pharisees. He said, with a father, leave their children to starve and feed them snakes. Now, if you know anything about the Bible, inside of the Old Testament, there's a passage about what happened to the Hebrews in the desert, where they were hungry and they were fed snakes because they had some of them disobeyed. Jesus said, would a father do that? And he said, that is not my father. That's what he said. Now, if you catch his drift, what he's saying is don't compare what the hell happened in the Old Testament with whoever Yahweh is that did that to who I represent. That's not who I represent. So I'm saying, I believe Jesus when he said, I'm not representative of whatever did that to the Jews in that desert. Because he's not. He has nothing to do with that. That's not the one that sent him. So I'm okay with that. But my point in saying that is that there's a clear differentiation between the stories of the Old Testament that seems to have more to do with extraterrestrial like encounters than the New Testament that has everything to do with human beings under a spiritual teaching about their relationship with the actual God of the universe, not these physical beings that are coming down in ships. That's what I'm saying.
Hold on.
And again, I'm not Christian, so I'm not one that defends the Bible where it doesn't need to be defended. I'm not defending the Bible. There are certain hiccups when it comes to all these different canons and books out and all that stuff. I get that. But all I'm saying is that when I read the canons that we have today, or let's say we have access to today, okay, I'm seeing a clear difference in the topics of the Old Testament, like for instance in Ezekiel, okay, this isn't the only instance like this, and in the New Testament, like I'm seeing a clear difference. Now I know some people may want to include the Book of Revelation, right? But there's high debate on what the Book of Revelation is referring to in terms of the future versus something that happened in the past. Like it's a high debate on that, and maybe I might cover that as soon as I get more research on how that pertains to maybe the subject matters that we cover here. But I wouldn't mix the New Testament and the Old Testament whatsoever, because then you'll start convoluting the truth of what's being said. Because I do think that Jesus' message was one that was for humanity, period. I do believe that. But this right here is a whole nother side of another right now. This has nothing to do with anything but what this man said he saw. And I don't know if you've seen that boot and that calf that I showed based on his description, but it's very clear what this man is talking about. And it's very clear he's not lying about it. He's not making shit up. And I heard one Jewish scholar say that Ezekiel was he was locked up and he was having dreams and he wasn't really thinking clearly, and he wrote all of this, and this is basically him being drunk. Like, does this sound like a drunk man to you? I don't see drunk, but this is a Jewish scholar talking about the book of Ezekiel, stating that this is a drunk man's tale. Mind you, drunk men don't tell no lies on top of it. So I don't see the drunkenness, but I see where people are purposely trying to mislead you to think that you shouldn't pay attention to the first chapter of Ezekiel. That doesn't mean anything. It has nothing to do with the truth of, the point that you should be focused on, which is everything else, right? Whatever. But there's other passages that are like this inside the Bible and other canons too, because I know, Rush, you mentioned about the book of Enoch. Now,
the book of Enoch is similar to what the description Ezekiel is talking about. But we have to expound on Ezekiel experience politicking with God himself. Now, in the book of Ezekiel, it also breaks down how the people in Ezekiel land was sinning. They were sinning to the point where they knew how to disrespect God on a thorough way. They would face their backs at the sun a certain degree to pretty much disrespect the Most High, and they were so bad to the point where when God came down, like the way Ezekiel described him, he was like, yo, his face looked like light land, his stomach looked like fire. Like he was so vexated to the point to come down to speak to Ezekiel about the behaviors of the people in that land, to the point where he didn't even take the time to design a decent humanoid body to come down to politic with Ezekiel himself. You know what I mean? And you can find that in the book of Ezekiel too.
Okay, here's the thing, right? And this is just my opinion, right? Because I have not studied the entire book of Ezekiel. I'm going over this first chapter like it ain't no tomorrow. But I was thinking about what he's describing, right? I can't say for sure that the book of Ezekiel is one cohesive story. I can't be sure of that. I can be sure that it seems like it most likely is two different writers talking about two different things in two different time periods. Like that's what I'm sure of, because this right here, for instance, if he's talking about in a later chapter.
I stopped them again. I don't know how long I'll be able to stop them.
Okay. This is worse than having the cake cut. This is worse than that. Okay. Like, I don't like this. Okay. I don't like it. Really, I don't like it. All right. However, I guess I have to deal with it.
Man.
But to Rush's point, I'm not sure if everything in this one book is by the same author, let alone the same cohesive story. And again, when they're using the term God, you got to read the Hebrew, because you really have to if you want to know exactly what's going on.
Well, here's the thing, right? The people from in that time frame, they would use Yah's name and to explain who he is and give him some type of glory. For example, the word Yahshua, right, means Yah the Savior. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times people will use that name just to exalt Yah's name. You know what I mean? For example, hallelujah, right? Hallelujah is the most highest praise that you can use, which means praise ye Yah. In layman's term, God's name is Yah. You know what I mean?
Right, but
you know what I mean.
God, the people coming out of this spaceship right here.
Listen, man, like, yo, I mean, that's the interpretation you have, but listen, man, like, yo,
no, it's not an interpretation.
Hold on. Let me just say this, right? It doesn't exempt the fact that it possibly could be angels. Now, when you read the book of, hold on. There's a book out there that breaks down certain fallen ones that teaches humans to create certain things. Like, for example, makeup was designed.
Alchemy?
Hold on, makeup. Nah, I'm not talking about like chemistry and magic. I'm talking about the fallen ones giving humans on inventions to create, to conquer others and seduce others. For example, the fallen one, Azazel was the one that taught females how to create makeup in order to seduce men. Now, there was another angel that taught another group of men how to create metal in order to conquer other
Rush cooking
new
right
worlds
now,
and stuff
baby.
like that. I mean, so I mean, yo, we all talking about the same thing, man. I mean, just different interpretations. I mean.
Well, no, I'm not challenging what you're saying literally in terms of what physically happened, that as far as like the different angels, right, and what they taught human beings, because all we're talking about is extraterrestrials that came and upgraded humans. Like that's.
I mean, the government. That's the name the government gives them. I mean, extraterrestrials.
Okay. So,
I
they can
mean,
give whatever name they want to give them. We're clear on what we're talking about, who we're talking about. However, when you say Yah, right, generally speaking, the conciseness is Yah represents the all-encompassing like consciousness of the universe. That's not a being. That's not a singular being. That's someplace that can be here and not there. That's not what that is. So that's why I asked you. What
you're talking about, you're talking about the Om. Know what I mean? Which the word Om, the word Amen derives from the word Om. You know what I mean? The word Helio, the word holy derives from the word Helio. The word Helio is a basic word for sun god. Like, yo, that's a whole totally different.
I'm not talking about the sun god. What I'm asking you is, if you're saying that Yah is who Ezekiel was talking about in chapter 1, you got a fundamental problem, because you got people praying to Yah. Meanwhile, he's describing 4 physical humanoids, and nobody, and I'm talking about myself included, prays to a humanoid. We don't. That's not what we doing. So it's like, if Ezekiel wrote the rest of Ezekiel and he's using the term Yahweh referring to these people, I don't think we understand.
Nah, I mean, here's the thing, right? Jacob, was it Jacob who wrestled with the angel, and the angel had to break the nigga hip to get him off of him because he was seeking for there's a lot of encounters within the scriptures that breaks down. I mean, that breaks down certain things. I mean, now, in all due respect, man, you know what I mean, I pray to Jacob's God. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? The God of Jacob. You know what I mean? The living God. You know what I mean? The Alpha and Omega. That's who I report to. You know what I mean? Now, as far as you saying, because you gotta understand, like, yo, with the messianic viewpoints, it also creates a different pronunciation on how to pronounce the Most High name too. So, like, you know, like, yo, this is. I mean, I feel where you can think that, you know. Yo, hold on.
When Lola's eating, she's thinking and eating at the same time. Marcus, what's going on? Anything you want to share on this conversation, brother?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty dope. It gives first of all, shout out to everybody in the panel. I don't want to be rude. Shout out to all y'all.
Yes, sir.
No, it was interesting because, like, I know there's like a whole bunch of talks right now about theories and critical thinking in other spaces too, right? So that's why I made a question earlier about what do you guys think of other talks of, like, potentially, whether it's science or magic or whatever, of other beings being around us or have been here before us and after us.
Let me show you what I think about that. Hold that thought right there.
Right, go for it.
Let me show you what I think about that.
Man, Marcus, ain't nobody on Black YouTube talking about this. All they talking about is beef, celebrities, and women. That's all they talking about. They ain't talking about
I mean, there's some spaces where, you know, they might open the third eye. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Not in Black YouTube. They don't exist.
So do you guys know who he is?
Okay, Rush. Salute, bro.
He looks familiar.
Okay. This guy, Joseph Bloomrush, right? He is no longer living. However, he is the one that applied for the patent on Ezekiel's description of this spaceship, whatever this is. He owns the patent on that. And now NASA owns it after he died. So basically, the federal government is in the Bible trying to figure out what's going on with these extraterrestrials from the Bible. Okay? Him right here owns the patent.
By the way, Intellectual Soapbox. Intellectual Soapbox. By the way, we do have one of these spaces though. It's this channel right here. There you go.
Yes, sir.
We're talking about it. We're talking about it right now.
Yeah, baby. So wait. So Lola, was he killed?
No.
Or
he died.
No, he wasn't killed. Okay.
No, he died of old age. However, he's the one that applied for the patent on Ezekiel's will. Now, granted, his design was slightly different because, of course, Ezekiel's will is not complete.
Salute Zealous Zebras 67. Salute.
His will is not complete, meaning that his description, it cannot be completely derived as we're discussing here, because his language wasn't as exotic enough for him to really explain that entire thing. However, the Bloomrich, he went and basically took the basics of Ezekiel's will and patented that joint. Just like there's patents on certain DNA that we don't have no idea about right now, okay? He did that. And my point to this is this. Anytime they are taking it that serious, a man that was drunk, according to the Jewish scholars, some of them, a man that was drunk just so happened to have said something that NASA owns a patent on. Like, are you kidding me? This sounds like a cover-up. This guy right here sounds like a cover-up to me. So that's what I think about that. Like, yeah, they know it's true. They know that the book of Ezekiel has nothing to do with the quote-unquote God of anything. It's talking about something very specific. And these beings that was in this trap are beings that I don't believe were. I believe they were humans. I just can't really tell you where specifically they're from. But I can tell you that this is some real shit right here. This is not no regular schmegular religious stuff. Not this. Go look him up.
You know, she's thinking when she was eating. She was thinking when she was eating.
Well, let me say this, right? It's not coincidental that, you know, people have tried to, you know, put in patents or try to do certain things, and those things never came to fruition. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So my thing is essentially this. You know what I mean? Just like when you watch movies like Minority Report, or you watch any movies where they show technology, and we're so fascinated by it, right? We're like, oh man, that'd be so cool if they had that now. But the thing is that
shout out to Blade Runner.
Blade Runner 2, these are things that always have existed, right? And, you know, it takes, you know, texts that are pre-modern era, right, to kind of showcase these different things. And I think the book of Ezekiel, you know, I mean, from that passage is speaking on terminologies and things that you know, that existed, you know, during that time frame that he saw, you know, with his very eyes, you know, and he expounded upon not just through one chapter, but he expounded on it through several chapters, right?
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? So for somebody to expound on something for several chapters and be that descriptive, this is not someone who is drunk. I ain't never seen no drunk person be that descriptive, nor be that clear in their thinking or logic. You know what I'm saying? Right. And if there's some type of liquor that makes you that clear in logic and thinking, then we all need to drink it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
you know,
yes,
and I am not an advocate of alcohol or smoking or marijuana or anything like that.
Right.
I have my own personal reasons for that. People can do whatever they want. You know what I'm saying? So my thing is this: at the end of the day, everybody can tell that whatever he was showcasing or talking about, there was a profound thing that he felt. There's a profound thing that he saw throughout his time, you know what I'm saying, and throughout his journey, that he saw that was profound in him, that he was able to decipher these different events, these different beings, and these different things that are also foretold in other books of the Bible. So that means, so if he was a drunk, right, does that mean everybody in the Bible was drunk? Because if what he's saying coincides with what other prophets and other people are saying, were they drunk as well? You know what I'm saying? I remember there's a passage in the Bible where they're asking Paul, I think it's a couple of Jewish sects, you know, or Jewish counterparts that are asking Paul, is he drunk? You know what I'm saying? This is in Acts. They're asking him, is he drunk? Or before they can even ask him that, he says, it is the morning time. So what I'm foretelling you, you know what I mean? You know that I'm not drinking or I'm not inebriated with any substance because it's the morning time. So he had to use that as an example because this probably happened during that time too. Oh, you're just drunk. Oh, what you see is not real. Oh, you didn't see this happening. This is not true. You know what I mean? You're babbling on. You know what I'm saying? You know, so when the same people are seeing the same thing more than once, like in the experiences you talked about, you've seen the same thing more than once. There's truth to it. We just can't sweep it under the rug. We can't act like it doesn't exist. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's definitely a big thing, especially when the same occurrence is happening several hundred years later. The same beings are explained in Revelations, which is several hundred years later, if not 1,000 years later. You know what I'm saying? From that time in that text. So yeah.
Well, you know what? And that's the thing. It's sad that back then, if you spoke about something that people couldn't understand, the reaction is, "Oh, you must have been drinking," because obviously that's the only thing that made.
Or you said that you were practicing witchcraft.
Right, you practicing witchcraft, and somebody got your mind wrapped up like that. That's so sad, and it's real easy to throw witchcraft into the mix when people are talking about things that are actually real. And that's why I'm very careful when I sit and tell somebody that they think up or they're lying. It's like I really get into the nitty gritty of what people are saying. Like even with this, I know it seems simple. It's like 28 verses, but I have poured over these verses for years. Just these 28 verses, okay? Nothing else. Just these 28 verses. And I'm sitting here like, even when I first heard it when I was around 6 or 7 years old, I was just so intrigued by it because I knew something else was here and I just couldn't understand. But as I got older, started learning, then it started becoming a bit more clear to me. And even now, it's not, but so clear. It's really not. Like when you, by the time you get to the end, you see this guy is really enamored by what he's seeing. Like he's describing small things on the wheels. Like I don't know what they would be doing, but he's describing things very, very like specific. And it's like he was paying hell attention to what was going on. So I don't believe in any drunkenness, but I will say this: what I do find extra interesting about this is that in verse 3, right, where he gets into referencing this verse right here, this time period when he's seen the actual heavy thing, the kavod, or again, right. What happens after that is these beings, at least one of these beings gets out and starts talking to him via telekinesis and is telling him about what he needs to do and say. But he knows who they are. He knows what they look like. He knows who they are, but they're not talking to him in a conventional way. And my thing is they have that technology to which they can do that. And the real weird thing is these beings are not directly involved in anything that's going on in the Bible. If you read it, you'd be like, so what is their position in all of this? They have no position in it, yet they're influencing how human beings are functioning politically and socially. They're influencing everything, but they have nothing to do with anything. Now, remember we did a show where we was talking about the black government, right? That influences everything. But you never see them and they don't directly have much to do with anything, but yet they're the ones responsible for everything, but you never see them and yet they don't say shit, but they say everything. Like, this is what I'm noticing about these things. Now, I believe Ezekiel when he says, this thing told me, and he told me in my heart, mind space. He's talking to me, but he's not moving his mouth. I understand what he's talking about. However, what I find very interesting is that this thing is telling him, go here, say this, do this, I'll help you here, but nobody will ever know this is no one. Same thing with Moses. He was told by this thing that was talking to him, go tell this person and do this, and then I'm gonna do this for you. Meanwhile, nobody outside of him actually sees who's really in control of this scenario, which is the being that he had that experience with. Like nobody sees physically these things. But these things, the influence of whatever was talking to him is there, but not directly. You see what I'm saying? And then it's like other verses of the Bible where it's like, okay, these strange beings that some of them are called angels, some of them we still don't know what they were. Like for instance, Adam and Eve, that whole story where you have beings that are in a sense kind of pseudo low key jealous. And yet they have influence, but yet they don't. They kind of do, but they kind of don't. And I'm sitting here like, human beings essentially in the Bible are being manipulated by these beings, but these beings are nowhere to be found. Like, just notice the story. They're nowhere to be found, but yet they have everything to do with what everybody is doing. That's a black government, if you ask me. At least in ancient times, that is a black government. Now, in this day and time,
a black government?
Yeah, a black government. That's what it sounds like.
Really, a black government?